Have you ever wondered why royal marriages look like fairy tales on the outside, but behind the golden walls, the reality is completely different? They show us grand weddings, shining jewels, and perfect smiles. Yet the truth that no one dares to speak about is far darker and far lonelier than anyone imagines. Stay with me, because once you know what really goes on, you'll never look at royal love stories the same way again. The first thing no one tells you is this. In royal marriages, love is not always the reason two people come together. Instead, most unions are carefully planned deals, designed to protect wealth, secure power, or maintain a public image. Imagine stepping into a marriage, not because your heart chose it, but because the palace told you it must happen. From the very beginning, you are reminded that your partner is less of a spouse and more of a duty. But here's where it gets even more shocking. Many times, the person who wears the crown has little to no say in who they will marry. Yes, even those at the top sometimes live with partners they did not pick themselves. Think about that for a moment. What would it feel like if the most important decision of your life, the person you share everything with, was decided for you? And even worse, you couldn't walk away. Behind those smiling wedding pictures you see on magazine covers lies a strict rule book that dictates every detail of the couple's life: who they can meet, where they can travel, even how they should behave with each other in public. Nothing is left to chance. The so-called romance is carefully staged, almost like a theater performance that never ends. And if you think love can still bloom in such an environment, here's the painful truth. Private happiness is often sacrificed for public duty. Imagine sitting across from the person you married, unable to express real affection because eyes are always watching. Even inside the palace walls, staff and advisors monitor everything. You might think the couple enjoys freedom once the doors close, but in reality, the walls have ears, and the pressure never truly fades. Did you know that some royal spouses are chosen not because of love, not even because of family ties, but simply because they look acceptable to the outside world? The palace needs to project strength, charm, and stability. So when a marriage is arranged, appearance becomes just as important as loyalty. The result? A relationship where personal feelings often take a back seat to politics. And yet, the story doesn't end there. Many royal couples still try to find moments of real connection. They carve out small pockets of normal life, short walks in hidden gardens, whispered conversations when the cameras are gone, stolen glances that only they can understand. But those moments are fragile and constantly at risk of being erased by the heavy demands of tradition. Now pause for a second and think, what would happen if one of them dared to rebel? To say no, to follow their heart instead of the rule book. The truth is, history has shown us that such choices often lead to scandal, broken ties, and exile from the very family that raised them. It is a heavy price to pay for something as simple as love. And that brings us to the hardest truth of all. A royal marriage may look like the ultimate dream from the outside, but for those living inside it, the cost can be unbearable. Behind the crowns and carriages, many live with quiet sadness, unseen sacrifices, and a love story that was never theirs to begin with. People often think that once a royal couple is married, they live in a golden dream. But the truth is far from that. Behind the palace walls, every choice is under watch. Even the smallest decisions about family life are rarely personal. For example, royal couples don't always decide where they'll live. Their homes are chosen based on duty, tradition, and public expectations. Imagine being married, yet not free to choose your own house. Now pause for a moment and picture this. A grand palace hall, chandeliers glowing, cameras flashing, the world watching with admiration. Yet behind that dazzling smile, one heart may be silently asking, am I really happy, or am I just performing for everyone else? This is the hidden truth no one dares to say out loud. Now here's something most people never hear. Royal marriages often involve contracts. Not just financial agreements, but rules that outline behavior, appearances, and responsibilities. These contracts aren't spoken about openly, but they shape the couple's daily life. Can you imagine being bound to follow written rules, even in matters of love? It changes everything. And then comes the expectation of heirs. In royal life, marriage isn't just about romance, it's also about ensuring a future line of succession. This can put heavy stress on a couple, especially when the entire nation waits to hear the news of a child. It turns what should be a private joy into a public responsibility. That pressure can create distance between partners, making the relationship feel more like an obligation than a choice. But the most surprising truth: many royal couples aren't allowed to openly disagree. They may have arguments behind closed doors, like any married couple, but in public, they must present perfect harmony. Even if they are going through struggles, the world only sees the smiles, not the pain hidden behind them. And that's the side no one talks about. But here's something most people never imagine. Behind the perfect wedding gowns and carefully arranged photos, there are deals being signed, rules being read, and sacrifices being demanded. A royal marriage often starts not with romance, but with negotiation. Families come together not to ask, do you love each other? But to ask, what do we gain from this? That's the question that silently decides everything. Even the idea of privacy is almost non-existent. Every trip, every gathering, even the way a royal couple greets one another is studied and sometimes criticized. Some couples can't even show natural affection in public because every gesture is seen as a statement. Touch might be turned into breaking news, and that creates enormous pressure on their bond. And here comes the most curious part: when royals marry, it isn't just a private bond, it's a global headline. Every gesture, every glance, every word becomes analyzed by millions. Can you imagine living a life where even your personal love story isn't really yours anymore? That's the heavy crown of a royal marriage. But hold on, because it goes even deeper. In some cases, marriage rules in royal families are so strict that love isn't just discouraged, it's forbidden. That's right, forbidden. A prince or princess might have to give up the person they truly care about just because that person doesn't fit the royal standard. Ask yourself, could you walk away from the love of your life just to obey tradition? And if you think that's the hardest part, wait until you hear this. Even after the marriage happens, the couple often doesn't get to live as freely as normal people. Their schedule is filled with ceremonies, charity events, and diplomatic duties. Sometimes they spend more time smiling for crowds than being alone together. So while outsiders see a fairy tale, the reality is a carefully managed performance. Some people think that marrying into royalty is all about wealth, gifts, and power. But the hidden truth is that sometimes it feels more like joining a company than joining a family. Every move you make is monitored. Every friend you choose is questioned, and even your hobbies might be controlled. Imagine loving to travel freely, but suddenly being told where you can and cannot go, because your safety, your reputation, and the family's honor all come first. This is the side of royal marriages that the public rarely sees, where independence becomes a memory, and loyalty becomes an unspoken contract. But here's a shocking fact you may not know. Many royal marriages have less to do with romance and more to do with negotiation. Behind closed doors, there are conversations about money, political influence, and public image. And sometimes the couple themselves have little say in these decisions. That's why you'll often notice how royal weddings may look grand on the outside, yet the eyes of the bride or groom sometimes tell a different story. They're smiling, but you can almost sense the weight pressing behind that smile. Here's another part. No one tells you, when someone marries into royalty, they don't just marry a person, they marry a system. A system filled with traditions, expectations, and restrictions that have been passed down for centuries. And if they ever dream of stepping outside those rules, the pushback is instant and sometimes brutal. That's why many people who marry royals slowly begin to fade from the public eye, because the less they are seen, the less they risk making mistakes. And let me tell you, what happens if a royal marriage doesn't work out is even more unbelievable. Divorce in royal circles is not just a family issue, it becomes a national scandal. Private arguments are twisted into headlines, and personal heartbreak turns into public gossip. For most of us, ending a marriage is painful but private. For royals, it becomes history, forever written in newspapers, books, and documentaries. But the biggest question people rarely ask is this: do royals themselves actually have the freedom to marry who they love? Or is love something they sacrifice in exchange for their title? Think about it. How many royal marriages have we seen where love seems genuine, yet years later the truth came out, it was never what it appeared to be?